But we will definitely talk about storming the Capitol. You got to talk about it.
Storm over the Capitol, he said. All right, ready for the Midrash? No, not quite. Let's pray. Father, we've eaten and we're satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So, Midrash on the 1 year cycle, but also a couple of slides on the Torah portion. This is what we read. A couple of slides on the portion itself. How many mitzvot? Nada. Nary 1.
Nary.
All right. So within this portion, there's a word that's used. It's called that place or bamakom. Makom is place, and in that place would be bamakom. From 28:11, that place is mentioned, and according to Rashi's commentary, that scripture doesn't mention which place is meant, but it means the place mentioned elsewhere, which the same phrase bamakom is used talking about Mount Moriah in Genesis 22:4. So it's held that the place where he had his vision, Jacob had his vision, and laid his head around the pillow or pillows of stone, that this took place out on Mount Moriah, which would also be known as the Temple Mount. According to tradition or legend, even, shortly before 700 BCE, or 700 BC, colonists from the tribe of Dan arrived in Ireland by ship. In about 569 BCE, the prophet Jeremiah came to Ireland after the fall of Jerusalem. Jeremiah brought a stone with him called Leophel in Gaelic, or stone of destiny. The stone had been Jacob's pillow, according to legend. The stone was later brought to Scotland and became known as a stone of Scone. And Scotland's kings were crowned upon it until it was captured by King Edward I, Edward Longshanks. You may have seen him in the Braveheart movie. He is the arch enemy of Braveheart. He captured the stone of Scone and brought it back to England, and English and or British monarchs were crowned upon it ever since that time. It was captured. It was stolen actually by some folks and took it up to Scotland and was then recaptured and brought back. Although there's dispute whether or not the one they gave back was the original one they stole or not. But it is currently on loan, so to speak. It's up in Edinburgh Castle, and it will not. Supposedly, the agreement is with Scotland that it won't leave Scotland again until it's brought down for the next coronation of a British monarch. And here's a picture of what it used to look like. It's in the picture on the right. It's under that's the coronation chair, and that's where it was kept in Westminster Abbey until it was stolen by the Scottish nationalists, and then, as I said, it was brought to Scotland, where it is in Edinburgh Castle today. And it'll be brought back supposedly for the next coronation.
Whoever, there's rumors that the Queen has died. What? Because nobody's seen her in a long time, and they're gathering forces around the capital there.
Oh. Or that she's dying.
They're assuming, she's either dying or has died.
The world should mourn.
All right, so that's really all the slides I have on the Torah portion. Very, very scant.
Tell us more about the stone.
Well, there's a crack in it that
Been repaired.
it was broken when they took it. They took it and they broke it, but had a previous repair mark at that point. So they've been broken before, and were subsequently repaired.
And there's some doubt if that's really the same stone.
Right. There's doubt. Well, the question kind of is, did Edward capture the real one in the first place? And did the one that was stolen and brought back, is that the one that was originally stolen from here? So, I think the fact that they stole it probably indicates that it was the one that was captured by Edward I, or whether the one they brought back is the same one or not may be questionable.
Or it was a diversion so they wouldn't steal the real stone.
That sounds like an Agatha Christie novel.
That sounds a little bit too complicated
Is
for
there
me.
any gematria on the stone?
No, just a few crepes. There's no
Oh, no, I mean,
pictures or gem.
in the name, like, whatever
Um,
this is called.
Well, those others, I suppose there could be. I haven't sussed that out yet, but the terms used for Leophale is an Irish or a Gaelic word for it. It's not a Hebrew
Like,
term.
didn't Jacob name it or something like, didn't?
No, he named the place, didn't
Oh, well,
he? No?
I
On the
thought there
bottom,
was
it
somewhere
says
where it
Jacob
said-
slept here.
I'll just say I'd like to believe that that's the stone. I sure like to believe that.
All right. Continue on now to our Ketuvim Netzarim readings. So again, starting out like we did last week, what was your favorite vignette from this week's
Bailey, my pillow.
portion? My pillow guy has it. Very, very firm. What was your favorite vignette? Was it one of these or something else? Was it I am the bread of life? All will be taught by Elohim or taught of Elohim? Unless the Father draws them, the Mount of Transfiguration. How do you nullify the Torah with your traditions? Not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from God. He has seen the Father. Even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the Master's table. Ephatah or Ephatha, or till the Son of Adam had risen from the dead.
I think my preference leads towards why do you nullify the Torah with your traditions?
My emotions lead toward the one about the little dogs.
The little ducks?
Little dogs.
My intellect, this is the Mount of Transfiguration.
Addie, your turn.
What's for lunch? No, actually, my favorite one was actually not listed. It was the one about the leaven of the Pharisees.
Okay.
That was just so.
But yeah, I think
Because of Hala.
really,
why were they
I had to agree with Jim.
trying to
Yeah,
avoid the leaven of the Pharisees because that whole bread thing just seemed weird.
Did you bring bread? I didn't bring no bread. Why didn't you bring bread?
What leaven did you use?
It's flatbread.
Look, this Pharisee came up to me and offered it for half off. I give it it.
The bread of life one is very,
Good.
well, I'm just saying, it's very controversial to me because of the, when he was talking about, I can't, I don't know exactly where it was, but where the 70 left, or was it 70 left or either 70
So
stayed?
because of the difficulty of understanding that.
Yes, because it was really kind of controversial. I mean, it was really kind of strange, and if it was strange to them as Jewish
You
people
kind of
the
double
day,
down on eat my flesh and drink my blood.
I mean, because they understood all the things that we're trying to understand because they were raised in it, and they didn't understand it. So
Maybe in the back of their minds, Torah said don't eat blood.
Yeah, cannibalism, really? Yeah.
it's interesting.
We'll have some slides on some of these vignettes. Unless the Father draws them, the passage, John 6:44, no man can come to me except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up on the last day. And that's from the King James. So my comment here, entire religious system seems to have been built using this passage as a support. Here's a commentary from the Good News of Messiah translation. The idea of drawing is that of getting a large beast to follow along on a small rope. The beast has to be willing and can easily overpower the rope and yank it out of the hand of the owner if it has a mind to. Kind of reminds me of our conversation of your dog. It would lead you on if you don't have the right collar. But a few chapters later, Yeshua says, "And if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me." So, the question is, was Yeshua lifted up from the earth or not?
Yeah. Yes.
So, can people resist being drawn? Yes or no? It seems hard to say someone can resist God, but if the idea of a beast on a rope is a vignette, that the rope is not as powerful as the beast. So let's think about that. Let's take a quick look at one verse from Acts 7. It's verse 51. There are other translations that may read more clearly than this one. This says this: stiff-necked people with uncircumcised hearts and ears, you continually oppose the Ruach HaKodesh. You do the same things your fathers did. Other translations would read, instead of oppose here, they read differently, like resist.
Yeah.
Wes, can you read yours, sir?
You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do you.
So, can someone resist being drawn?
Yep.
Seems so. Seems so.
So you just solved Calvinism?
I hear churches tumble.
Decapitated Calvins too. Well, what I wonder is drawing meant in the sense
unlocked trailer with no gun, just a little fake Glock, airsoft pistol.
That's when you get a big bulldog.
He didn't even give me that. George did.
Oh, we got the shotgun in there.
It's about as long as my trailer. I was
Okay.
You couldn't swing it.
We're back up.
We're back on. No more.
cut the tape.
So, except. Not that anyone has seen the Father except he was up from God. He has seen the Father. So, Yeshua has claimed here to see the Father, claim that no mortal can make. If you parallel passage with John 1:18, the Almighty no one has been seeing, the only kindred Almighty, the one being in the embrace of the Father, that one reveals him. Is from the Good News of Messiah translation. Commentary on 118 was, it was the Son who appeared when Yahweh was seen in the form of a man or the form of an angel. The Father is hidden and is revealed only by the Son. Slide back there? Okay. Why do you nullify the Torah with your traditions? This is from Mark 7. So he said to them, Are you thus without understanding also? Do you not perceive that whoever or whatever enters a man from outside cannot defile him, because it does not enter his heart but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purifying all foods? This verse and the parallel in Matthew 15 is erroneously interpreted as if Yeshua was condemning the Pharisees for keeping kosher. However, the context has nothing to do with that.
A lot of people who use it to say, see, you can eat anything because it doesn't defile you.
That would be such a
Well,
horrid hypocrisy, because he said the commandment, he just said don't.
well, he defines later what he was talking about.
Food.
For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, and blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. Or cause, the idea was that eating with unwashed hands would cause the food to become common and no longer fit for human consumption. Part of it, think about just wordage and verbiage. What is food?
Whatever the Torah says you can eat.
Yes. And if it's not fit for human consumption, the words ochel and achla are important, eating and food. They go together in Hebrew versus food and, whatever. We have food as a different root word in ours. But food in Hebrew is what you can eat. And what you can eat is defined by what has already been set apart for human consumption.
Is there any word in Hebrew for that? For things that people would eat that are not considered, you know what I'm saying?
Treif.
Oh, okay.
Is that
I
Hebrew?
don't
I thought
understand
that was
that. What
Yiddish.
Well, I'm just saying, is there, something that, something like roadkill or something like that? Is there something that
Maybe it is Yiddish. I don't know.
like the Gentiles eat, things that the Gentiles eat or something like that? Is there a word for trade?
Yeah. As Addie pointed out, it's probably a Yiddish word, not
Okay.
a Hebrew word.
I don't know. It sounded Yiddish.
Although I had a question. I'm wondering if in this conversation, is it possible that they're not talking about, like in the Torah, if you touch a dead body, or there's several things that can make you unclean to go into the temple or the tabernacle or whatever. Could it be, so back then they seemed to be really extreme on a lot of things. I'm wondering if they weren't even talking about that. I wonder if they were even just talking about just if you don't wash your hands and wash everything around you, you ain't even human. This is.
Well, I
Maybe.
think that in Matthew, these are, I don't know if I have a slide next to this or not. No. In one of the two parallels, Matthew 7, Mark 7 or Matthew 15, it talks about rinsing or washing your hands up to the wrist,
Mhm.
which is actually Netzarim Yadayim was the ritual hand washing that is prescribed to do that. You have a taste for it when we've done Passover, because it's part of the Passover service. But I think the idea of it, basically saying if you don't, essentially, this is in the same section of nullify the Torah with your traditions, right? So it's basically saying if you don't do this, then it's no longer food. If you don't wash your hands the way we prescribe in our tradition, it's no longer considered to be food for you. So they've changed, but does the Torah say that? Well, Torah says a lot of things about how you kill things, but doesn't really say that you have to have your hands washed in a certain manner before you can eat it. And that was part of the leaven of the Pharisees. In other words, adding to. Leaven adds to and puff things up. So it's basically adding to the word to make it that way.
And like we mentioned a few Sabbaths ago, sometimes those fence that they build take the place of the command.
So the thought is if you violate this fence line, it's actually violating the Torah, which would be, it says, it's basically taking over what you say goes. And so you basically put yourself on.
Therefore, to not disobey the Torah, you have to obey me.
Yeah. And my additional commands.
It's very interesting. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is it just hits you kind of like a ton of bricks when you realize what he's saying is you basically destroy when you do these traditions of men. They destroy the command. I mean, it's like that's really
traditions
serious.
themselves aren't bad. Paul said to obey the traditions.
Right.
It's the question is, are you replacing the Torah with traditions?
Well, I'm just saying, the ones that we know that actually do destroy the commandment. You know what I'm saying? It's just scary. You know what I'm saying? That it's really, I guess you just got to be really careful. I mean, with your own traditions and your own things, not to, not to set up something in your own house or whatever that would destroy God's commandments. Because I don't know. When I was reading it today, I just thought, oh, this is.
It seems to me now, when you look at this whole section and about what we talked about, what it's been used to attack eating biblically clean. It's the same thing but backwards, right? Because people who are saying you can eat anything is essentially nullifying the Torah. Literally, with their own tradition, says you can eat anything.
That's exactly what
It's exactly what they're doing today.
Right.
Which I guess we shouldn't be surprised.
Right.
I think that dovetails into what is the righteousness of the Pharisees. We're warned not to do the righteousness of the Pharisees.
Also, too, that was it Matthew? I have a note here. It says, "Where they honor me with their lips." It said, "Draw near to me with their mouths, and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me," because they teach us doctrine of the commandments. And then they sound so good. It sounds so good, but it's just absolutely.
All right. Et patak or ephatha. So this is from Mark 7:34. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to them, Ephatha, that is, be opened. And then from the same verse from the Sheeta translation, and he looked into heaven and sighed and said to him, be opened. So what is missing from the Aramaic Sheeta text?
Ephatha.
You mean the transliteration of it, I should say.
Yes. What is missing is, there's no need to translate be opened to the language because Yeshua's phrase et patak is already in Aramaic. So he's already speaking Aramaic, so it doesn't need to be translated into Aramaic again because it's in Aramaic already. So it essentially is that when you look at it, you can see that there's several places in scriptures that we see in the gospel. We see Yeshua speaking and saying something, and it was his words were transliterated as best could from Aramaic into Greek. And you see that pretty much very frequently. Is that we saw it last week with Talitha Kumi, and this week with Eth Pathach. Is that you see his words in Aramaic being captured by the Greek New Testament.
So they did translate it, or they didn't translate it?
Well, the English, if you go back one slide here, yes, at the top there, in the English translation of the Aramaic text, there's no words that say, and this means this, because it's already there. Be opened is in the Aramaic, the Sheeta is in Aramaic, and so Ethpatak is already Aramaic, so there's no need to translate it into a different language, so to speak, because it captured it already. Because he's speaking Aramaic. That's the point of it is he's speaking Aramaic, and the Greek text maybe there's good arguments for the Greek text being the oldest New Testaments. I think there's arguments against it as well, but the Greek New Testament does capture the original language he was speaking, and it wasn't Greek.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is all I have for slides. Nope. I have one more vignette.
Yay.
Till the son of Adam had risen from the dead. Now, the text is from Mark 9:9. As they're coming down from the mountain, he gave them orders not to relate to anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man rose from the dead. So, what did Yeshua mean by Son of Man?
Presumably himself.
Well, the Gospel of Mark starts using that phrase, or Yeshua has said to use that phrase repeatedly since Mark 2:10 first time it's used. And some interpret Son of Adam and Son of Man as the phrase from Narnia, son of Adam and daughter of Eve, just meaning humans. And I would underscore Yeshua's humanity. But I think there's more to it than that. Yeshua doesn't tell us what he means by the phrase actually until we get to near the end of Mark, kind of the high point of Mark in his trial, in Mark 14:62. This is from the New American Standard. And Jesus said, I am, and you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Tearing his clothes, the high priest said, what further need do we have of witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. How does it seem to you? And they all condemned him to be deserving of death. So what in that phrase that his response would cause him to be guilty of blasphemy? Well,
Saying that he was of God when they thought he was not.
So 3 times here, I don't have one of them highlighted, but if he is speaking in Hebrew to the high priest, he would have said something like Ayeh, right? As in the phrase Ayeh Asher Ayeh, I am who I am, from the book of Exodus. But what I have highlighted in black there, Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power, which is from Psalm 110, and then coming with the clouds of heaven. Who's that? Where's that come from?
That's from Daniel.
That's from Daniel, and where it's literally it's the Son of Man vignette in the book of Daniel. And so his words were considered to be blasphemous to the high priest, and so right there you can see that it's a claim that they would not countenance. So that's why he's condemned for death. So the references I said are Psalm 110 and Daniel 7, and Yeshua identified himself as the Son of Man as depicted by Daniel. And now we finally know what we know why Yeshua used that phrase. This is from Daniel 7:13 and 14. I kept looking at the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. They came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. So Here's a commentary by Nabil Qureshi. He says, in this passage from Daniel, a being who looks human, like a son of man, approaches God. Although he looks human, his entrance is on clouds, an entrance reserved for Yahweh in the Tanakh. Then the one like the Son of Man is given everlasting dominion, glory, and a kingdom, even though only God is supposed to have dominion, glory, and the everlasting kingdom. Finally, this passage says that all people will serve the Son of Man. This word serve in the Aramaic is palak, whether in Aramaic or in Greek, always notes a service due to God. So the Son of Man phraseology he uses isn't Son of Man as in son of Adam, daughter of Eve. It's much more than that. He's linking himself back to the one spoken of in Psalm 110, as well as the one who is presented like a Son of Man before the Ancient of Days, and given. We see that all authority has been given to me, as Yeshua says. This is the phrase, the terminology is drawn from the book of Daniel, where it's definitely a prophecy about Yeshua and what he's going to do. Questions or comments? Now I think that was the last slide I had for this.
That last one was a real power
It
hitter.
was. That was amazing.
Makes the phrase "son of man" suddenly seem a lot more taken seriously.
Yeah, it is. We think of it. It sounds very innocuous at first. I mean, using it as just anybody can be a son of man because you're a human, but using it in the phrase and connect yourself to Daniel 7,
Well, saying the son of
the son of man. Yeah, not a son of man. Yeah.
So
So-
like that prophet reminds you, is how.
Mhm.
But again, it kind of punts the question back again. Why does Daniel say the son of man? Why?
What's the vision that he had? Is that he had that thing? He's had that vision.
You mean because he's seeing something that's obviously human-like, but not. I don't know how to explain.
Well, it's so interesting too because of the way that King Nebuchadnezzar described, the fourth man.
Mm-hmm.
He said he's one like the Son of God or something.
As
He
if
said
he
like
knew
that.
what that looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like it shows up Sarah, in Daniel. I don't know. Just that's kind of. It's just amazing.
So there you have it. Canines.
Let's see.
Dog statue.
I gotta
Means-
think.
It
It was a question. I had a question. Just gotta remember.
Now your question is, what was that question?
That's highly questionable.
I'm starting to question my sanity.
All right. Let's break for hot.
I think there was a question. Were you starting to ask a question?
I was.
Okay.
I mean, the point is,
No, we can go back.
She was too timid. She didn't blurt it out.
Blurt.
no, I had a question about that phrase, with a sinful and adulterous generation seeks a sign. I think I had it in my portion in Mark, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Why did he call them a sinful and adulterous generation? Specifically the Pharisees. It seemed like he addressed them with that moniker a lot.
Well, when you put, it kind of goes back in my, when we talked about why do you nullify the Torah with your own traditions? What does adultery and spiritual adultery look like? Well, adultery and spiritual adultery are related because it means spiritual adultery is going after other gods when you've already been betrothed to Yah. And so what you're doing by replacing what Yah said with what you said is essentially the same thing as replacing Yah with you or with your teacher, so to speak. And so they're adulterous in the sense that they've gone after other gods, in the sense of a God that didn't say that you have to wash your hands up to the wrist, and their God says you did. So if they don't recognize when you think about it, if you don't recognize the Messiah, and if you don't recognize the Son of God when you see him, what good is your religion? if in the most important test that comes to you, you reject him and kill him, it's as if, what's the point of your religion if you can't, if it's so bad you can't even recognize the prophet sent by God, or in terms of Eliyahu as John the Baptist. If you can't recognize the Messiah of Israel, what kind of spiritual insights do you have? You've traded it for your own positions of power and authority, and thinking you know something that you don't, and you teach people that what you don't know to be true, or possibly what you know not to be true to be true.
It reminds me, I don't know where it is, where it says, you scour the heavens and the earth looking for one conversion, and then when you find it, you make him twice the son of hell as you are.
Yeah.
It seems, I think you're right. I thought the verse was kind of interesting because, like in the Torah movements, you hear that kind of phraseology thrown about, like sinful and adulterous generation, kind of directed towards like the Christian church. I'm not saying that phrase couldn't be true, but I thought it was interesting to hear Yeshua say this at the Pharisees because, they weren't celebrating Christmas or eating pork or anything like that. They were actually going above and beyond the call of Torah. I mean, in their minds.
And twisting at the same
In
time.
their minds to do that. And,
Sometimes that very act was nullifying parts of it.
yeah. So I thought it was interesting he was using that phrase for them when on the outside they appeared to be very righteous and were, had a pretense of piety.
And dedicated. And
Yeah. I don't know, I
On the
think,
outside, they're as whited tombs, but on the inside, they are full of dead men's bones.
I thought it was kind of interesting to notice that. So the adulterous generation might be more a
Rebellious.
description of their attitude towards God. Not necessarily that they were all adulterers, but that they
Right,
had
I
this
think that's-
adulterous attitude
Mhm.
in the way that they dealt with God.
I think that's what he meant by that versus that they're literally, doing adultery. They're adulterous in terms of the relationship with God. That's what I thought.
The second, comment I had was.
blurb again. Sorry.
Speak up. Turn that knob.
Well, I think it was in Mark when Yeshua told them to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. And I thought that was kind of an odd
Yeah, because
detail.
the others said,
It's actually instead of king.
Zadok king.
Yeah, the Sadducees,
Yeah, I don't know that the other gospels list Herod in there. It's usually Pharisees and Sadducees, I think that gospel is only reads with Herod. So what do you think the level of Herod might be in that sense?
I don't know. I mean, well, funny, which Herod is he talking about? I mean, it's not Herod the Great, is it? So is that the same one, the Herod that killed John?
It seems to me in the scripture, it seems like when it talks about Herod, it seems like it's talking about somebody who's like a modern day politician. They'll do anything for power, glory, prestige,
I was going to say Gavin
and
Newsom.
riches. Yeah, Gavin Newsom, Gavin Herod.
What is a Herodian?
One who follows Herod, or
Maybe that's what they're meaning, not necessarily
Was he a
Herod.
practicing Jew or not?
well, I don't know that he was sort of practicing. I mean, he was interested in hearing what John the Baptist would say, right? Yochanan HaMatbil. Even though, Yochanan HaMatbil was teaching against him, he was interested to hear him speak, he would say.
What, was that the same one that they said that it was better to be a pig in his house?
No, that was the
than
old one.
Okay.
Herod the Great.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
Well,
There's a lot of them.
It could be toward office too. It could say a Herodian or a leaven of Herod would be to seek after the
Political power.
political power
Yeah,
of
that's what I was
the
driving at.
opposition, of ruling of government, so to speak.
You're right, there's a bunch of Herodians around today here in this.
That's what I guess. This draw
So,
of
when
like
they
if you
implement contact with
this
Herod,
draw of power, this draw of I don't know. It just seemed
Yeah.
like that could be an
To
explanation.
get off on being able to do it, whether it's right or wrong.
right.
We can't think of any more
When we
ways to
start
waste
all
time.
over, there's some gaps I need filled in.
Let's go burn a candle. Let's break for hot air.
I'll never get my way.
So sad.